مساء الخير إلى جميع المشاهدين في لبنان والعالم. الشخصية الأبرز في حقل الرياضيات في القرن المنصرم بعد 30 عاما من الأبحاث توصل إلى نظرية تحمل اسمه كانت كافية لتكسبه مكانة في كتاب التاريخ، مع أنه سبق وحقق كثيرا من الإنجازات التي تستحق التقدير والاهتمام. وعار كبير علينا أن يكون عملاق مثقف مثله مجهولا في عالمنا العربي، وهو العربي الوحيد الذي تولى رئاسة أكاديمية العلوم في بريطانيا. أحاور الليلة السير مايكل عطية، والبداية مع هذا الريبورتاج.
ولد مايكل فرانسيس عطية في 22 نيسان العام 1929 في لندن من والد لبناني الأصل ووالدة اسكتلندية. تلقى علومه المدرسية في معهد فيكتوريا الملكي في القاهرة بداية، فالإسكندرية، ثم في مدرسة مانشستر جرامر في مانشستر. بعد عامين في الخدمة العسكرية التحق بمعهد كامبريدج ليبدأ رحلة في علم الرياضيات. هذا العلم الجاف والموضوعي يتكلم عنه مايكل عطية بشغف وشاعرية. تخصص في التوبولوجيا، قام بأبحاث غيرت أسس الرياضيات ليحوز على جائزة آبيل التي تساوي جائزتي نوبل. من كامبريدج إلى أكسفورد، برينستون وهارفارد، تنقل بين أبرز جامعات العالم، وهو العربي الوحيد الذي تولى رئاسة أكاديمية العلوم في إنجلترا. حائز على أكثر من 20 شهادة فخرية وأكثر من 20 جائزة ووسام. له كتب وإصدارات ومنشورات، وقد لمع محاضراً في أضخم المنابر العالمية. يعيش اليوم في أدنبرا، يستمتع بإنجازاته التاريخية وينتظر شروق الشمس كل يوم.
Sir Michael Atiyah, thank you for being with us tonight. It's a pleasure. Lebanese father, Scottish mother, yes. British citizen. How do you define your identity?
I'm a citizen of the world, but my father's family is, of course, Lebanese. I have a long connection with the Middle East. I spent time in Britain. I've spent time in America. I travel the world. I'm a cosmopolitan, but I'm Lebanese by my father's family and by tradition, so I belong here as well as to other parts of the world.
Your background is rooted in the northern area of Akkar, yes. Beinu precisely,
yes.
A quiet, peaceful and beautiful hometown. Do you have a feeling of belongingness to that area?
Partially, but also I'm a Hati on two sides. My grandfather and grandmother were both Hatis. My grandfather came from Beinu, my grandmother came from Suqul Gharb. So my father was born in Suqul Gharb, so I have a split division even with the Atiyah family. One half was in Suqul Gharb, one half is in Beinu. So we cover both sides of the country.
And which part has more predominant effect on you? The Suqul Gharb one or the northern part one?
Well, I spent more time in the Suqul Gharb one when I was a boy, because that's when my grandmother and family lived. Beinu I visited a few times, and I knew it was the ancestral home. And of course, many more Atiyahs from Beinu. It's a much bigger branch. So I knew both sides, but I knew the south side better because I spent time with my grandmother and family there.
Does Beinu wake up anything in your unconscious?
Well, I have my house in Scotland, which I have in the hills. I gave it a name. I had to think of a name, so I called it Beinu to remind me of my ancestral home. So I've taken Beinu from the Lebanon and I've put it into Scotland. So it has a, and I have in my house in Edinburgh a copy of the family tree, which I got from Beinu, showing the ancestors from 17th century and all the Atiyahs who are going up on the branches and all the large families. So I have this picture in my flat in Edinburgh showing the large Atiyah clan, which is a nice thing to have. Although it's only, as you know, a male clan, the females were not included in such family trees. In those days, they didn't have equal rights.
Your father, Edward Atiyah, was a professor of English literature. He has worked in Sudan, yes. Khartoum for the British government. Do you think he was able to nurture your love for Lebanon?
Yes, but he actually, I have to correct you, he was not a professor of English literature. He studied history, but he went in, when he worked in Sudan, he worked in the British government as a political liaison officer between the Sudanese and the British. He was educated in Oxford, so he understood the British. He was from Lebanon, he understood the Arabs. So his job was to to act between the Sudanese and the British. After he retired from the Sudan, then he took to writing novels, and he wrote an autobiography and many novels, so he used his literary skills there.
One of them was entitled The Egyptian, and the other one was entitled The Arab. His story.
Arab tells his story was his autobiography, and this was a very successful book. And then he wrote many novels, one of which was called The Thin Line. It was a psychological thriller, translated into many languages, including Japanese and other languages, and made it into a film, very successful French film. So he wrote quite a number of novels, which were quite moderately successful. And then after that, he also worked in Britain, in the political world. He worked for the Arab League in London, and he gave broadcasts like you do, and wrote articles for the newspapers. He moved in the political media world when he retired from the Sudan. But of course, he had close links with the Lebanon, and when we always came here, he brought the family here, so I knew a lot about Lebanon through him, of course. And
you moved with him to Khartoum or not at all?
Oh, we lived in Khartoum. I was brought up in Khartoum.
For how long?
And until I was 12, I lived all my life in Khartoum, except every year we would have vacations. We would go either to England, we would come to Lebanon every year. But until 12, that was my permanent home. Then from at the age of 12, I was sent to boarding school in Cairo, Victoria College. And I was at school there for 3 years. And in the last year, the school moved back, the boarders moved back to Alexandria, which was the original home of the school. So I had one more year there. But I used to go back to Khartoum even then for my Christmas vacations. So until I was 16, Khartoum was the base home.
Victoria College with the children of prominent Arab families.
Yes.
Of the region. Yes. Let us share with you some of the moments you treasure from that era.
From the Victoria
College.
College.
If you have some.
Well, actually,
you must have.
Of course, there are many famous people who went to Victoria College, but usually they were younger than me, like King Hussein of Jordan and Omar Sharif. They were small boys, or maybe not even in the school when I was there. So.
And King Simeon of Bulgaria.
And I didn't.
King Faisal.
So I didn't. When I was there, I didn't know who was going to be famous. But I enjoyed the school. It was a very cosmopolitan school. We had people of all nationalities. Syrians, Lebanese, Egyptians, Greeks, Armenians, Italians. Very, very many languages were spoken. Many cultures. It was a very good area to be mixed. So I learned a lot from being educated in this environment. The school was an English type school, but the boys came from all very different backgrounds, and I learned a lot about different cultures, and it was a very interesting time.
From Cairo, from Alexandria to Manchester Grammar School, then Cambridge, then Oxford, with a quick transition at Princeton, at Harvard, the most prestigious universities every single student would dream of enrolling in or for joining. How did the British education shape your personality?
Well, of course, I had already British-style education in school in Cairo and Victoria College because it was based on British schools. And then I went to England. I went to a different kind of school, Manchester Grammar School, which was a rather elitist academic kind of school, which had a very good reputation for mathematics. This is why I went there. When I went to England, my father asked which is the best school for mathematics. They said Manchester Grammar School. So I went there, and then from there to Cambridge. And there, of course, there was a strong tradition in mathematics. The college I went to was the college where Isaac Newton went to, and had very famous mathematicians. So it was a very strong mathematical basis. And so that gave me a very good start in my mathematical training, and had a big impact on me. And so, of course,
this is the academic education. What about your personality?
Well, I think
one thing is sure, that you're somehow cold.
Well, I think in between, I should say, between leaving school and going to university, I had to do 2 years national service in the British Army. You see, I was born in London, so I had technically British nationality from birth. So when I was 18, I was called up to 2 years military service. So between school and university, I did 2 years. So by the time I went to university, I was already slightly more mature. And this is actually quite good, because this means you are able to enjoy university life more. And I did in university many things besides mathematics. I used to swim for the university. I played sports. I had a lot of friends. It was a good social, and the colleges in Cambridge are good places in which to study, because you meet many people on an everyday basis. So it gives you a rounded education. And it was not just mathematics. I learned other things.
What about your personality?
What about my personality?
How was it shaped?
Well, of course, if you have different experience being in different countries, it's also part of your experience. We lived in Khartoum, we traveled across every year to Europe, and we did so many countries, so you begin to pick up a lot of things there. And then I had 2 years in the army, which is a bit tough, you know. Have you been in the army? No, probably not. But if 2 years in the army is quite a...
This is what made you tough?
Well, it toughens you up. I was in boarding school first. Boarding school is already toughens you up, because when you're at home, your mother looks after you all the time, and you're pampered and you're spoiled. When you go to boarding school, you have to stand on your 2 feet, and you have to, you know, be a bit tough. So this already makes you a little bit more independent. And then 2 years in the army makes you even more independent. So I became somewhat independent. I was no longer dependent on my parents, my family. I could sort of be on my own 2 feet. So that's, I think, part of the development of your personality, growing away from your home and acquiring your own personality. That's growing up. And I did that through schooling and through the army and then college. And by that time I was then adult, and of course a few years later I got married. And so part of all of this, part of your education carries on all your life. You learn all the way from the people around you. You learn from your parents first, and you learn from your teachers. You learn from your wife. You learn from your children. You learn from everybody you meet. It's all part of each piece of learning. Moderates your personality, makes you. Affects you in different ways. I can't define my personality, other people can define it only.
So Michael Atiyah is our guest tonight. أصدقائي المشاهدين، استراحة قصيرة نعود من بعدها لمتابعة حوارنا ولقائنا مع عملاق الرياضيات في العالم مايكل عطية اللبناني الأصل. خليكم معنا. السور مايكل عطية هو ضيف هذه الحلقة من وراء الوجوه. مرحبا مرة ثانية.
Thank you.
You have contributed to a wide range of topics in mathematics, centering around the interaction between geometry and analysis. What is about mathematics that appeals to you so much?
It's a beautiful subject. It has a marvelous aesthetic appeal, intellectual aesthetic. I mean, painters like to paint. Why? Because they create beautiful things. Musicians like to compose, they want to create beautiful music. Mathematicians like to create beautiful mathematics. It is austere, it's a kind of special kind of beauty, but it's a similar appeal to the mathematician who creates it. It's a long struggle to create it, and then you finish, you make something. It's like producing a beautiful painting. So the creative artist, ask him why he does his painting, he likes to do it, he enjoys it. The same with mathematician. He likes to do mathematics, he enjoys it, he likes to create something. It's similar to that of a creative artist. I mean, I have a lot of fellow feeling. My name is Michael. Really, my parents wanted to call me Michelangelo because they admired Michelangelo. And I feel that somehow a spirit, something like an architect creating things in mathematics.
But something, the artist, when he delivers a piece of art, he can share the pleasure of seeing it, of watching it, of touching it, of listening to it with the others. Whereas the mathematician or the scientist, when he does something, when he works on something, when he makes a research, the pleasure is something very personal that cannot be shared with others.
Well, it can be shared with a small number of others who can appreciate, to other mathematicians or other people who can understand it. So it's a small number, of course, I agree. It's not like the general public can appreciate it. It is only appreciated by a small number. It has importance for the general public. It may be useful. It may have significance in other ways, like science has a lot of applications. But the satisfaction, the pleasure is that of the creative artist. But even when a painter paints, he does it, if nobody else likes the painting but he likes it, he's still happy. I mean, he does it for himself to satisfy his own satisfaction. First of all, and if it maybe take 100 years for the public to appreciate him. So he is not intentionally, originally for the public.
But afterwards he thinks about the others, about the buyer.
Of course, he has to live and make a living. But really, this is a kind of concession to really creative artists. They want to do something for their own satisfaction, primarily. They have to do it to sell to the public, they have to make concessions. But this is secondary, and all great artists very often ignore the public and they die poor people. Their art is only bought up hundreds of years later when they have become famous. So at the moment they create the art, it's for themselves.
So a mathematician is an artist.
And amongst other things, he's an artist, he's also a scientist. He's both. Because mathematics is also the basis of science. And large parts of mathematics have close relationship with things in science, so you have best of both worlds. And in many universities, mathematics is either in the arts, or science, or science faculty. It can be both sides, and it's very, very central. So I'm quite happy to be a mathematician.
But mathematics is logic, and art is not an expression of logic.
Well, that's not entirely true. Even if you write a piece of music like Bach, there's a lot of logical structure and formal structure. Architecture is not. It has to have, the building has to stand up. It has to have mathematical foundations. So actually, you can't say that art has no logical structure at all. It would be chaos. And also in mathematics, it is logic, but the mathematician selects and makes beautiful, of all the possible logical combinations, he selects those which make a beautiful outcome. So there is creativity in selecting the material and making the picture. So the logic is simply like the paint that the painter uses. That's the full theory is something which is a vision which the person imposes on the logic. Logic is like a machine. It doesn't, a computer can turn out logic, but it can't create real mathematics.
In one of your talks, you mentioned the word fun problem. What does make a mathematics problem fun for you?
Well, all people like puzzles. Children like puzzles. A lot of adults like crossword puzzles. A puzzle is something which is a challenge, intellectual challenge. And when you solve a challenge, you feel happy. Enjoyment. It's a kind of game. Many games consist really in puzzles. You play against yourself in various kind of games of cards. So fun is a satisfaction which you enjoy playing a kind of game. And so mathematics is also has many aspects. So one part of it is a kind of game you play, your brain plays against the opposition. The opposition is another player or another logician or another thing. But so it has the aspect of play. But that's true of other art as well. A lot of music, musicians will put in some surprise note to have fun with the audience. Fun is some part of human nature. It's an enjoyment. You can't be serious all the time. You have to have jokes. You have to laugh. You have to enjoy life. And so fun is part of what we like to do. And that's true in mathematics. Even if you think mathematics is totally dead serious, you have to be able to sort of enjoy mathematics and have fun with it sometimes.
When you talk about mathematics, you implement or you introduce or you talk about it with a lot of love and passion.
Yes, absolutely.
And you make out of this world a fascinating one.
Yes.
How come? And mind you, I was an A+ student in mathematics.
Very good, congratulations, Mike. Yes.
Really, you make out of this world a tempting, fascinating and beautiful one.
Yes. Well, mathematics is one of the great pillars of civilization. It's been with us for thousands of years. It's part of our history. Language and mathematics are the two pillars of civilization. And of course, they relate to the external world. The language is to describe what we see, and mathematics is for various practical purposes. It's built out of the past, how you measure things. So they are part of our fabric. But then they get much richer embellishment. Literature is much more than just words. Mathematics is just more than just counting. So they grow with civilization, and they develop in lots of ways, and many dimensions and many aspects. And I think of them as the two really foundations on which our culture and civilization rests.
So Atiyah, you have developed a new and powerful technique in topology, the K-theory, which led to solve many outstanding problems, difficult ones.
Yeah.
What were those problems?
Well, these are problems fundamentally of a geometrical kind. But geometry in mathematical terms can mean many kinds of geometry. It doesn't mean just ordinary simple geometry in the usual sense. It can refer to things which involve many dimensions, because you can study things which depend on more than what we call degrees of freedom. You can move this way, you can move that way. If you're traveling in a car, the car can move, but you can move inside the car, so altogether you have many dimensions of motion. So when you describe something, you have to consider all these different possible ways in which it can move. And that gives you a lot of space to move, and the relationship of all these things give you a very intricate geometry. And so geometry, advanced mathematical stage, studies very complicated relationships and tries to see simple truths and simple principles which guide you through it. And then you develop techniques, and then there are test problems. If there are problems, then if you can solve a problem or some kind of problem, you've got to show that your tools are good. And if you have another set of problems which are too hard for these tools, then you have to manufacture some new tools to solve these problems. And the problems always are the test of how good your tool is. And so problems and techniques go together in mathematics. You invent techniques to solve problems. The problem challenges it, and if you can't solve it with one technique, you have to invent new ones. So what I was doing was developing new techniques to solve problems which are test problems, which test the techniques of the time and show you need to do more. And so we can solve much more difficult problems than in the past. We make progress. It's like building up machinery. In the old days, you just had hammers. Now you do advanced, power saws and drills, which can do more difficult things. And mathematics builds intellectual machines, which can solve more difficult problems. All the problems have to do with fundamental things about geometry and measurement, but big complicated ones, which you can't easily tackle with elementary rules. And you have to find more and more sophisticated ways of dealing with it. The present world is much more sophisticated than it was in the days of the ancient Egyptians. We have much more complicated life. And so the mathematics has to be equally complicated. And all these television cameras and so all depend on mathematics. You don't think this works by itself. There's a lot of mathematics behind the fundamental laws of electricity, magnetism. All this is mathematics. And I'm interested in this sort of things too. So,
in 2004, you and Isadore Singer
Yes.
have been awarded the Abel Prize
yes.
of £480,000 for your work on the Atiyah-Singer index theorem,
Yes.
where you connected geometry and analysis in a surprising way. Could you describe the establishment of the result a little closer?
Well, in school you study usually bits of mathematics quite separately. You study algebra and you study geometry and you study calculus, but the real world of mathematics, these things are all interconnected. You use them all together, and one of the fundamental problems in mathematics is always solving equations. Finding solution to some kind of equation. Elementary algebra, it's algebraic equation. Calculus, it's a differential equation. But solving an equation is quite difficult to find exact solutions. But sometimes you may have a large class of problems, and you can find the general technique which enables you to solve all these problems without knowing too much detail. And the method which I was developing, which involved what's called topology, enables you to solve problems without getting into all the details by just general methods, general ideas. And these are very powerful general methods. And this was the sort of kind of fundamental theory. And this is a method which involves connecting geometrical methods on the one hand to calculus on the other hand, bringing them all together and unifying the whole subject. So it's a very broad field. Because it's very broad, it has many applications in different parts of mathematics and different parts of physics. So if you unify things in mathematics, then this gives you a very powerful tool because it can be applied in lots and lots of ways. So it's important because it was very central, it did many things, has many applications in lots of different directions, and so very central in its importance. That's why it was recognized as significant.
Already having a list of impressive achievements in mathematics, you think that theory was your most important result?
This thing I did with Singer, well, it was, but you see, in mathematics, a theory is not something like you just write down one piece of paper or one equation. I worked on this thing for probably 10 or 20 years, and not just one result, but it's a kind of body of work. So you have many different versions of the same result and different generalizations. So this was about 10 or 20 years' work. It wasn't just one, but all connected.
So it was the result that pleased you most in your entire life of research?
I think so, yeah, because half my life was spent on this problem, mathematical life. So it is
30 years.
20, 30 years, probably, yes. I think so. In that sense, it encompasses many, many things inside it. So I was fortunate to have something which I could spend a long time together, and it all fitted together and was very satisfying and was useful in lots of ways. So I was very pleased about it. But I'm quite enjoyed doing some small things. When you create things, even the small things, if they're beautiful, you like them too. But if you create something big, you have a big work of art, or you build a big building, of course this is your showpiece. But you may also make some beautiful jewelry on the side, and that's also nice. So you do both things. You do small things which are satisfying, and then you can create a big edifice, a big theory, a big building. And that's the grand thing. You point to your pyramids or your Arc de Triomphe or something. That's your creation. So yes, both small things and big things.
Let's have another break.
Thank you.
Sir Michael Atiyah, استراحة قصيرة. عودة إلى وراء الوجوه مع السير مايكل عطية الحائز على جائزة أبل الموازية لجائزة نوبل. Sir Michael Atiyah, you spent, as you said, 30 years of your life working on that area.
Yeah.
Were you convinced from the beginning of reaching the result you have attained?
Oh, you're never sure. In mathematics, exploration, and it's a sort of, and you don't even know at the beginning exactly where you're going. It's explosive discovery, exploration. And gradually, you get some picture of where you're going, and then when you have a clear idea, you aim for, and then you think you're sure you're right, and then you have to find the correct mathematical proof. So on the way, you become more and more convinced. But at the beginning, it's of course a very open discovery. You don't know what you're looking for. It's discovery in mathematics and science is not, I give you a problem, you solve it. You have to find the problem. You have to find your way forward. It's like exploring a new continent, climbing a mountain. You don't know it's there. So it's
but one thing is sure that many people started before you, and many people tried to achieve what you did and tried to reach the objective or the goal or the solution or the result you have reached finally.
Yes, well, there was some little work in that direction, but very little. But for most people, they didn't actually think of formulating the problem the right way. So what we contributed was to identify the correct problem and pose it and solve it. So you got in mathematics and science, you've got to find the right question. You see, finding the right question is usually half the way to getting the answer. Once you know the question, the problem, then trying to solve it is difficult. But very often posing the correct question is half the answer. That's true in all science. How to ask the right question. So what we did was we found how to ask the correct question, which nobody else had really asked quite that way before. There were partial results, different bits, but we found what we think was the correct way to pose the problem in correct generality, and then we solved it. So it's important that you emphasize the importance of finding the right question to ask. And that's true in all walks of life, really. You should ask the right question, even if you're an interviewer. You must find the right question to ask, otherwise you don't get a good answer. So
but when I'm motivated with my guests, it's different. I find them in a very fluent and very easy way.
Yes. Well,
you were motivated, you were patient, and you had guts.
Yes.
What triggered all those feelings?
Well, first
Did
of
you
all,
have self-confidence? Were you sure you were going to reach where we have reached?
Well, you acquire confidence as you go along in mathematics. After you solve some problem, you acquire some confidence in your abilities, but you're never quite sure how far you're going to go or where you're going to reach. And the problems they don't come in an easy, tidy way. You find them partly by accident, and you ask some questions, and you get some results, and gradually a picture emerges like a mist lifting, and you gradually see more clearly. So it's a very complicated process. It's not just a simple question of, I have an idea, I solve it. You explore, and you look through different pictures, and you find things, and you put it together. It's a very complicated, so it takes years, this investigation, even to get to the beginning of asking these questions. So it's the whole process of invention or discovery is a very interesting one, psychologically.
Galilei says that the laws of nature are written in the language of mathematics.
Yes.
Why is it that the object of mathematical creation are found to be essential for a correct description of the external world?
Well, that's one of the big mysteries in a way of life and philosophy, and people have different theories about it. On the one hand, the human mind has emerged, our brains emerged from a long process of evolution, and in this process of evolution we had to survive, and to survive we had to be able to understand the physical world around us, and so our brains evolved in a way so that we can understand the physical world. Otherwise we would not have been successful. And so the human brain, which is a very marvelous organ, developed in a way so that it was compatible with the laws of physics. So it's not too surprising if then what the human brain produces, mathematics, itself is consistent with the laws of physics of the universe. So in some sense you can explain it on evolutionary grounds, that evolution, the brain came out of a physical world, and so it has to fit in with the physical world, and what it produces has to fit in. But that's not entirely, the problem is not that easy, because human beings evolved in the world of a certain scale. We have to survive in this scale. We fight against animals of that certain size. But the mathematics we develop, the physics we develop, works also the microscopic scale of atoms, the microscopic scale of the galaxies and the universe. And we didn't have to fight against galaxies, except for dealing with microbes. We didn't have to deal with things at the atomic level. So what is surprising is that the mathematics which emerges from human evolution works at all scales, not just human scale, but the very small and the very large. The universe seems to be built on the same principles from very, very small to the very, very big. And that's a mystery. Why? Well, God created the universe in this way, and it was the simplest way to have one law, or simple laws working all the way, not different laws playing at all scales. So these are, but deep questions in philosophy have no simple answer. And that's why people study philosophy for thousands of years. They don't make any progress, but they ask questions and they have a discussion. So this is a question that has no real answer. Everybody has a different answer, which is partial. That's my answer. It satisfies me up to a point, but it doesn't remove the mystery, magic. Why is it true that mathematics is the key to the universe? Well, it's a fantastic, and that's why one of the attractions of mathematics. Why is it beautiful? Why do I like mathematics? Because it has this marvelous success. It has it opens the key to understanding the laws of the physical world. It's a fantastic story. So that's one of the reasons why it appeals to me and to other mathematicians.
You keep on raising questions. You keep on trying to find solutions or answers to those questions. Let me ask you some questions. When you live a mathematical life, it's all about logic. Is life logical?
Life is, of course, only partially logical, but even mathematics is only partially logical, because I say you have to select what appeals to you. You see, mathematics is a human creation. It's not logical. It's not a creation by a machine. And so, when we create things, it reflects our personalities, it affects our view of life, and lots of other things. So, mathematics is part of human culture. Shouldn't think of it as a logical dry machine. And in fact, when I work in mathematics, I work with other people, collaborators, and we talk and we discuss. It's an interaction, and it's part of the enjoyment of mathematics is that you share it with other people. So it's true that it has to satisfy strict logical rules. It's not, you can't freely change the rules of the game, but you have a lot of choices in what you pick and choose. What do you want to study? Why should you study this rather than that? That's the human act of choice, selection. So human nature comes into it, and your personality comes into it, because the kind of mathematics I do reflects in some way my personality. It's not quite the same as what somebody else would do, and different people contribute different things. Some solve some kind of problems, other people solve different kind of problems. Why? Well, why do some artists paint this kind of picture and some others paint this picture? Why do musicians compose different kinds? Because they're all different.
Has your life been logical?
Only up to a point, like everybody else. I mean, I try to be logical, because if you're totally illogical, your life could be ended in a disaster. You have to have rules in your life and things.
How is your life?
But my life is, I think, reasonably well. All life has its ups and downs, but it's a reasonably happy life. I have a wife and a family and children and grandchildren, and I enjoy.
But how is the life of a mathematician? Is it like mine? Is it like
I don't know what your life is like. I mean,
a normal one.
Well, mathematics is a bit different, because I think if you're any kind of creative thinker, you can't get away from your work. I mean, if you're working on a problem, it stays in your mind all the time. You can't totally shut it away and say, you can take a break. You can listen to some music, you can go to the cinema and so on. You can go for a walk or a jog, but the problem is still there. So mathematical problems, when you're working on them, they don't disappear, and so they carry them with you, and you go for a walk and you think about the problem. You come back home, you have your breakfast, you're thinking about the problem. So in that sense, they become embedded in your personality to some extent, and you have to keep that under control. If you let it dominate you, then you become a sort of social disaster, and your wife wouldn't like it, and your family wouldn't like it. So it's very difficult, but it's true of all artists. If you let your art dominate your work, then your life can become a mess, and some artists have great difficulties in living ordinary life because of that. So it's a balance. How do you maintain the balance between your human personality and your family and your ordinary life and the work, which involves such intense concentration? It's not an easy compromise, and some people don't succeed, and some people succeed better than others. I hope I've succeeded reasonably well in mixing the two and remaining sane.
In your personal life, you had 3 sons.
Yeah.
One was healthy, and he died in a tragic accident. How does the mathematician deal with these raw experiences, and how does the father overcome them?
Well, I mean, any problem in your family or your children is, of course, a terrible human tragedy or to put up with. In one case, we had a son who died suddenly, unexpectedly, and of course, it's a very trauma for us and his wife and so on. I think when you're young, you think the world is always rosy and there's always sunshine and there is no such thing as human suffering and misery. And as you get older and you live through things, you realize life has its tragedies. People die unexpectedly. People fall ill. Terrible wars. So you realize as you grow older that life is a very mixed blessing, and you have to put up with that and learn to live with it, both at the personal level and at the national level and the human level. I lived through the last World War, after all. I was alive. I was a boy, but I didn't have to fight in the war. But the war was going on all around me. And so you live through tragedies which are both large scale and small scale, and these obviously affect you. You have to respond to them. You have to do what you can to. I worked for some time in an organisation called the Pugwash Conferences which was aiming to sort of control nuclear weapons, and we were to stop the use of nuclear weapons in the future. And I spent some years as president of this organisation. So I've had spent some time in different ways on trying to make a contribution to human problems at this level. But so if you live through a normal life, you're very remarkable if you can escape human tragedy. And of course we all die eventually, and the end of life can be, both for yourself and for your family, can be extremely difficult in all sorts of ways. So life is not a perfect happy dream.
How do you reason death?
How do I reason death?
What is the rationale about it or behind it?
Well, of course, if we didn't die, the world would be overcrowded long ago. We are part of nature.
This is the fun problem.
Nature recycles itself. Animals, people live and come and go, and they are part of the rebirth of the generation. You have to face that fact. Whatever your philosophical views or your religious views, you can't ignore this. So it's part of natural, and so you have to accept and make your own terms with it. And if you are lucky and live a normal length of life, then you have time to reflect on it as you go and prepare for the end point when it comes. If you're unlucky, it may happen suddenly for yourself or for others, but it's something which we all face.
Do you fear death?
Well, of course you always fear. Nobody can say that they don't fear death at the moment. But as you get older, you become a little bit more philosophical about it. You say, well, if you've had a good life and you've lived long enough, it'll come one of these days, sooner or later, so you can't afford to ignore it. And then you get reconciled to it as best you can.
Are you a religious man?
Not really, no, not really. I was brought up in a semi-agnostic, and I'm not anti-religious. I'm fairly sort of moderate in my views, put it this way around. I'd like to be moderate in all views, all ways.
What does it feel to be Greek Orthodox?
That I don't know, because I'm not really Greek Orthodox. In fact, my great-grandfather was Greek Orthodox, but then he converted to Presbyterianism, so there's a really mixed religious background even in the family. My grandfather on my mother's side was a minister in the Church of England, so there was a religious background 2 generations back, quite a lot.
Very complex, enriching life.
Enriching life, yes, of course, but also complicated.
In all aspects.
All aspects, but complicated life too. So I, in some ways, was quite happy not to be involved in very complicated religious turmoil, because religious conflicts can lead to, as you know, to wars, disturbances. It's better to be moderate and to. So I allow other people to have their own religious views. I don't interfere. I'm happy to respect people's views. I have my own views, but we have to be moderate in our way we apply those views in life.
Last break. أصدقائي المشاهدين، استراحة أخيرة قبل ختام هذه الحلقة من وراء الوجوه مع السير مايكل عطية، أحد كبار وعمالقة مجال الرياضيات في العالم وفي القرن المنصرم. خليكن معنا. الفقرة الأخيرة من وراء الوجوه مع السير مايكل عطية ضيف هذه الليلة. You have witnessed another tragedy, which was the death of your father while he was taking part in a panel discussion in Oxford, a panel discussion which was filmed by the BBC. And in the discussion, he was defending the Palestinian cause.
That's right.
He had a stroke and he died.
That's right. He just got up to make his speech. It was a big debate. He got up to make his speech, and he only said, I think, one word, more or less, and he collapsed and fell, heart attack, immediately died on this platform. It was very dramatic because he was so, he had some heart problems, but he was very worked up. Obviously, debate, issue of this kind is very emotional, and he was, like many Lebanese, got emotional, and an emotional, tense moment is very bad if you have a weak heart, so in a way, it's a magnificent way to die, dramatically, arguing a case and something that you have. He'd been for many years defending the Arab cause and the Palestine question. That was one of his main activities. So that was what he was doing. And so in a way, he was still a young man comparatively. It's still a rather dramatic way to end your life. It has some theatrical element in it.
Your late father wrote, or was the author of many books, among which In Arab tells his story,
That's
an
right,
autobiography.
yes.
What does it mean to be an Arab?
For me, well, I'm only half an Arab because my mother half is Scots. I have to be fair on this. And I say I belong to the larger world. I am a strong believer in, of course, the culture of different civilizations, being part of their heritage. And Arab history and culture had a great contribution to civilization in earlier centuries, very important role. But the Western world in modern times has also made great contributions, particularly in terms of science. And I think all of these are enormously valuable to all of us. And I'm a child of both worlds. I have a foot in the Arab world and I have a foot in the Western world. And I want to be able to appreciate and enjoy the best aspects of both. So I'm interested in working for seeing good political relations develop between the two worlds, and I want to see the best cultural benefits derived from both sides, interchange. And so of course, it's sometimes difficult to be an optimist when things go badly, but that's what I believe. So I want to see a contribution made from the Arab world and from the Western world in harmony and working together, and crossing all cultural, artistic, scientific borders, bringing together, trying to solve the political problems that separate us.
Do you think today the Arab cause has been abandoned, or is it still alive?
Well, it goes through ups and downs. Everything goes in ups and downs, and in some ways things have been not so good in recent years, although in Lebanon, of course, things have improved. But in the larger Arab world, things are in some sense not necessarily very good. So it's not a very easy time at the moment. And there are lots of problems, global geopolitical problems. Oil is one of them, in some sense, that dominates the scene. And I don't see very easy solutions. I don't see that tomorrow everything will be solved. We're still in the process of working out solutions, and it's not easy.
You have received many honors during your career, as you have mentioned earlier tonight, at the beginning of the show. Do these honors make of you an outstanding citizen of the world?
Well, it's always nice to receive honors, you give a pat on the back. If you're a scientist or a mathematician, you do your work for the satisfaction it gives you, not for the honors. The honors are sort of incidental. It's nice to get the recognition, and this also recognizes the work, the importance of that field, mathematics or science, to the wider society. But it's sort of slightly superficial. The honors are a little decorations, but they're not. If we didn't have these honors at all, we would still be quite happy to do our work and carry on. So I think it's nice to get them as you get older. And,
but with them, you're more happy.
Of course, and it's nice to get them, and as you get older, when life gets more difficult, and your legs begin to give way, and you get older, it's nice to get something that compensates you for age. When you're young, you don't need honors because you have youth. When you get old, you need something compensation. So this is the compensation for losing your youth.
You are a reference today. How does a breathing reference live?
You mean I ought to be dead? Well, it's true. I feel now I'm past my sell-by date. I feel that I go down to a conference and everybody there is young people, and they look at me and they say, are you still alive? Are you still here? And you hear people giving lectures about your work as though you were part of history. So it's a funny experience, I have to say. If you live long enough these days people live longer. In the old days, didn't live so long. Now if you live long enough, you feel you're part of history. And it's a funny feeling. I've had this experience several times to be...
Is it tough?
To be tough that you're looking down from above on the world beneath. It's art experience, but it's quite fun also. I quite like being still here.
Do you live in the past?
No, I don't think I live in the past. No, on the contrary. I mean, I've had various interesting positions, you know, head of a college or a university or a professor. And when I finish, I close it and I usually go somewhere else and I don't look back. I think always you should look forwards and open your life again. When I retired from being a master in Cambridge College, I retired and I left and I moved to Scotland and I established myself in Edinburgh and I got a new life there and I'm doing things in Scotland. No, I mean, it's nice to enjoy the past. You know, you can look at your old photographs and things, but you don't want to live in the past. You have to sort of live in the present and look for the future and enjoy what you can do. And you mustn't regret the passing of the past. You may have had a good time in the past. You must not regret it. I mean, you only get sad if you do that. So enjoy the good times. Always look forward to good times for the future. This is the way I choose to live my life.
Despite your lifetime achievements, you're known to be simple and modest. Is it easy to remain modest and down to earth?
No, it's human nature being what it is. It's very hard to remain modest. I mean, you know, you naturally sort of start to think you're important when people give you medals and prizes. But I try to remain reasonably modest. I mean, because I realize these things are superficial. The important thing is what you do, and if you do that, you give your satisfaction, and that's its own reward. And of course, you only remain a human being. You have to interrelate with other people. You mustn't become. And I've seen so many times some people who become rather too big for their boots. You know, who become very possessed of their self-importance, and this is very bad. It doesn't go nicely. So that's an object lesson to avoid. You see people like this, and you say, "I don't want to be like that." So I try to avoid being, too grandiose. I like to be reasonably friendly with everybody, young people and other people without going on my pedestal. I think that's a bad way to live your life, to always looking down on everybody else.
It is said that you work every day for an average of 4 hours to keep your mind open and fresh. Is it true?
That's like all good stories. It's a slight exaggeration. I like to walk. First of all, because it's good exercise, and also I used to walk when I was thinking mathematics. If I was thinking hard mathematics, I don't sit on the desk and write. I walk, and even if I don't go outside, I walk up and down the room and I can walk up and down the room for 4 hours, not to put a pen to paper and think very hard. Because when you walk, it helps the blood to circulate, and the blood circulates to your brain, and this is what you need to think. So physiologically, it's good to walk. If you sit at a desk, after a while, your eyes close and you go to sleep. So I used to walk for the reasons which are to help you think. And when I was working for many hours a day, when I was young, then of course I would walk for many hours. Now I don't work quite so many hours a day, so I walk a little shorter.
It's also said that you love eating kibbeh
yes.
and meat in vinegar. لحمة بخل.
It is. Well, I like Lebanese food, and today I went out to a nice Lebanese restaurant and I had nice kibbeh and I had nice baba ganoush and I come to Lebanon for many reasons, to see my relatives, to see the AUB, where I help with the university and the mathematics center there. But I also come always to Lebanon because of the Lebanese food, and I'm glad to say the Lebanese food is still very good here in Beirut. And I've enjoyed being here so far, and I have a few more days of good Lebanese food to come, and I will enjoy that too.
سير مايكل عطية، شكرا لحضورك. أصدقائي المشاهدين، بتأمل تكونوا استمتعتوا بهذه الحلقة. شكرا على وفائكم، شكرا لفريق العمل، ونعطيكم موعد الأسبوع المقبل بنفس الوقت. تصبحوا على خير.